So the alternative strategy
is the canvas, then we go up and down. Yeah, I'm starting to remember it a bunch of times. Well, we've done it once.
We've done it.
Oh, we did do it twice. Yeah, you're right. Oh, yeah. I got my things.
Hello. I don't know why I use that voice, but welcome to Monetize Me. My name is Mac.
I'm Jay.
And today we will bring you another episode talking about business methodologies or how to start a business. So last week we talked about the lean startup. This week we'll talk about the alternative strategy.
Why did you look so sexual?
Because it's the alternative.
But it's... yeah.
So although the lean startup is focused on experimentation, has significant backing in business research, it makes you overly focused on the customer and especially what the customer wants in the presence. It ignores the customer's future wants and any experience or expertise that the founding team brings to the table. So the other issue that the lean startup has is the business model canvas. Because the business model canvas is overly focused on what the customer's perspective is, it kind of ignores the founder's perspective. And also, it provides an outline of how the business should look like in the future, like in 5 to 10 years, but it does not provide the roadmap that the founding team is going to go from to take this business from basically nothing to where it should be in those 5 to 10 years. So these are just some problems that have been identified with the lean startup. Do you have any insight to, or not even insight, like other problems that you might want to bring up
with the lean
startup?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it on the head. It's difficult when the founders know what they need to do. So in specific instances where maybe it's something new or more of a novel idea, I think the customers or the end users aren't always going to know what they want. And in which case you kind of have to rely on your founders more. And the lean startup might not be the methodology you want to use.
Yeah, for novelty ideas, innovative ideas, the customer has been known to dislike those ideas when they're first pitched to them. Customers really hate novelty, right?
Yeah, and it's not the fault of the idea, it's not the fault of the founders or the customers, but it's just you have to mentally disregard negative feedback when it's not allowing you to get your product to where you want it to go.
Yeah. So the alternative strategies.
The alternative strategy.
The alternative strategy pushes you to hypothesize or make observations and come up with a theory about how your business will succeed beforehand. Then you can choose different aspects of the business that you want to experiment with, whether that be your original business model, or if you think your business model is fine based on my observations, based on my experience, this is what I believe. And not only do I believe this, I have the experience to prove that this is what's happening and this is a problem, this is the value I can provide. I can then move on and then experiment with the product or whatever else I would like to kind of test against the market.
Okay.
So in summary, it's essentially write up why I think this business is going to be successful, and then later on come up with the tests and experimentation that you need, because experimentation is still important.
Yeah. And to add on to what you're saying, the lean startup being geared from experimentation from the get-go isn't wrong. And this methodology does utilize that. It's just saying you don't need to experiment with everything. There's some things that are concrete that you can rely on, that being the founder's experience and knowledge, or the founders plural. You can rely on what they know, and you don't necessarily have to iterate or experiment with it. You can use that as a baseline and iterate as you go and experiment as you go, but not necessarily everything like the lean startup kind of suggests.
Yeah, so the alternative strategy essentially says make your assumptions, and sticking to your assumptions sometimes is better and more monetizable than iterating over a bunch of different hypotheses. The classic example that they gave was They had two different businessmen. One decided that I have a hypothesis. I'm going to put $1 billion into it and start developing a factory to test it against customers' wants. The other one sat down and thought about their assumptions and hypotheses more, came up with a very detailed plan, and then started to execute. And the one who came up with a detailed plan using their expertise was more successful at the end. And this is just one example. I don't think it's necessarily always true, but this is what the paper is arguing.
And the company you were talking about was Tesla?
Yes, the company that... So Elon Musk was the one that sat down and thought more logically about his plan and how to move forward.
He kind of thought it out, and he trusted his gut. Again,
Yes.
you have to know when your intuition's right, which it's not always going to be, and you don't necessarily know that it's right, but sometimes it's... I think certain ideas, certain fields, it can be trusted.
In certain fields, yeah, it can be trusted where you have experience. That's the prerequisite.
Did he have experience there? Did Elon Musk have experience before with electronic cars before he started Tesla?
I'm not sure.
Something you look it up. I'm not looking it up.
So the alternative strategy focuses on some go-to-market assumptions before making other decisions. So the go-to-market factors are customers, technology, identity/culture, and competitors. So you can use the 4 factors to come up with a go-to-market strategy that you can base all of your other decisions on.
Okay.
And we'll expand more about how those factors fit into what we're talking about later. So the alternative strategy identifies a compass. The compass is collaboration versus competition, and build a moat versus storm the hill. Build a moat versus storm the hill.
I'll put the thing over.
Yeah. So collaboration, competition, build a moat, storm a hill.
They're not going to see your hands.
That's fine. So collaboration versus competition is pretty self-explanatory. Do you want to expand more on what build a moat is?
Yeah, so Build a Moat is more focused around IP and patents. You don't want other people to necessarily know how you're solving your problem, and you kind of eliminate the competition by patenting your idea and keeping it more opaque and less verbose about how you're solving your problem.
Yeah, that's exactly it. What about Storm the Hill?
So Storm the Hill is more of a fast-paced, rapid go-to-market strategy where you realize you have a lot of competition and you're not very closed off. You're fairly transparent about your solution, but your goal is to just act quicker than your competition and get out there first so that you can maintain your lead and grow from there.
So those are the two quadrants for the y-axis, right? So let's talk about the first quadrant. The first quadrant is collaboration and build a moat.
Okay.
So if I were to give you those two quadrants, what would you think of? / can you describe the type of customer that a company in that quadrant would go after, the type of identity they would have, type of technologies they might use, etc.?
Okay, yeah. So I think in that quadrant of collaboration and build a moat, you'd have companies that want to pair up to provide a certain service, maybe a certain software or tool to a bunch of bigger companies based on their patented technology. So maybe they, for example, noise canceling. Maybe they found a really good way to approach the noise canceling problem, and they have a technical solution that is just very novel, and it solves it in a very good way, in a very specific way. And they don't want other competition to kind of have that, so they collaborate with other companies, being the headphone companies or anything else in the sound industry, to provide their technology to them. They collaborate, they have their partners, and they have their patented technology that is the moat.
Yeah. So actually, you've been looking at my notes.
Yeah,
That's exactly the company I was gonna talk about. So that's exactly what
So you
we're
can talk
talking
about the company.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. Collaboration, meaning you're going to come into the market, partnering up with the current market leaders. So for that sound company that you were talking about, it
It
theoretically,
was just off the top of my head. I don't know where I'd seen it before.
yeah. So Beats, Sony, Apple, anybody
Those-
that makes sound related, um, devices, Sony even
You said Sony.
Did you say Sony?
I said Bose.
double
I thought
Sony.
you said Sony.
Yeah, so existing companies, and you're trying to keep control of your product. So this kind of might sound weird. Control your product. What does that mean exactly? That means that nobody else can really replicate what you're doing.
Yeah.
You either have an intellectual property, meaning you have a patent on it, a trademark, where they legally can't replicate it because then you can sue them, or it's very complicated and you're the only one that knows how to do it.
I think Apple was notorious for that, for the trade secret versus patent trade off, because I think Jobs specifically, the first thing that came to his head, I forget where I read this, the first thing he thought of when he was presented with a new technology was like, okay, do we want to trademark or trade secret this or patent it? If we patent it, other people will know how we do it. So are we worried, are they going to be able to figure it out on their own, in which case we need to patent it so that we can profit from it? If it's very difficult and they're not going to be able to figure it out on their own, maybe we want to make that a trade secret just so we can keep that internal and not risk other people figuring out how we do it.
Yeah,
I think
so
Apple's
those
done that
are
more than once.
those are two different strategies of protecting your product,
Yeah.
keeping control of your product. But obviously the trade secret, you need to have some very discreet employees. I think that could leak really
Yeah,
easily.
you have to. Well, also, but you can have, I think, confidentiality clauses
Agreements.
to where
Yeah.
if your employees do leak it, they'll be in legal trouble.
So the identity, the identity of the company in this quadrant would be an idea generation factory. You're always trying to generate innovative new ideas, and you're trying to patent them or keep them under the covers.
Yeah.
So that nobody else knows about these ideas / how to replicate what you're coming up with.
They benefit from staying obscure. They don't really want the competition or anybody else to really know how they're doing what they're doing. They just want, like, hey, this is what I'm doing. That's all you need to know.
Yeah. As far as customers, your customers will be the people in the industry. You can think of it as indirectly, your customers are the customers that Apple sells to, Sony sells to in the example of the noise canceling headphones. But your actual customers are those big companies that use your technology.
Your partners.
Your partners. So you're not focused at all on marketing. You're not focused on sales. You will never, not never, but you will rarely hear about these big companies that are in this quadrant, or even the small companies that are in this quadrant, because they aren't targeting you specifically, the consumer.
And that's how they like it.
Yeah.
If you learn about me, maybe you're going to look into what I'm doing, and maybe you'll find another way to do it.
So if you were starting a startup with this quadrant in mind, you would have to look at the people you want to partner up with, all the people in the industry right now, incumbents, and you'd have to tailor your solution so that it's compatible with their systems and protocols, because that's what you're going to be plugging into.
That's your market. You're building it for them. You need to know how they operate and make sure that what you're making is compatible with not just one, but make sure you know the wide variety of partners that you're going to be targeting and somehow ensure that it's compatible. I don't know if you have to reach out individually, because maybe there are specific things that are different that you need to tailor to. I don't really know how that works.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing you have to talk to them beforehand and figure out what they want, need, how they want it, and figure out how to make your product and service compatible with that.
And actually, now that I think about that, it'd be very likely that the founders of said company came from that industry anyways. Maybe their partners, their first initial partners, probably a company they came from or had business with beforehand.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it.
So the two important departments in these type of companies are the legal department
R&D.
and R&D. Exactly. Those two will make or break you. Moving on to the next quadrant. So the coordinates for this quadrant are competition and storm the hill. Do you want to kind of speculate about what a company in this quadrant would be like as far as customers, technology, competitors, and like identity/culture?
Yeah, so I think in my mind, this quadrant is all about the typical startups. It's the startups that are like, hey, I have an idea. It's not original. There's plenty of competition, but I want to build it out and get to market as quick as possible. I want to get the feedback from my customers so I can iterate, and I'm going to focus on speed. I'm going to focus on beating out the competition. Maybe I'm focused on a niche first. Maybe I'm focused on a certain aspect of the product, but there's a lot of competition, and I'm relying on speed.
This quadrant is basically, yes, the speedy, the fast go-to-market strategy. You're trying to get a product out to market as fast as possible. You don't really care about if other people copy you because you kind of expect it. It's inside of your business strategy. You're trying to get a foothold in this market. You're trying to disrupt it in some way, and you're trying to get ahead as fast as possible because you know that people will be following behind.
Yeah.
Right? So you're competing directly with incumbents. So anybody who already has a foothold in this market will be your competition, and the foreseeable people who are coming behind you, who are going to kind of follow your same business model, are also seen as competition because sooner than later they will be in there crowding that space.
Yeah, which I think, just saying, it's the not exemplifies, but the niche. I had it, and then I didn't have time to interject in time, and now I'm like,
you're good.
But it makes it even more important to find a niche, I think. So
yeah, it emphasizes finding a niche.
Emphasizes. There you go. Yeah, I think this emphasizes the need to find a niche. I think it's very important for startups in this quadrant to get as specific as they can.
Yeah, you're trying to in this quadrant, you're trying to redefine the value chain. We talked a little bit about what the value chain is. I don't know if that part's cut out.
we cut out the bananas, Mac. But a value chain is basically the start to finish of a product or service's life from when it's conceived and being worked on and built to the very end user, and everything in between, whether that is a restaurant ordering food, cooking it, preparing it, serving it to your customers, and the customers are eating it. That whole thing is a value chain from the produce growing the food to the user eating it.
Yeah. So the actual, like, the dictionary definition of a value chain is just a set of activities that provide value. So exactly, and anything that goes from production to providing customer value of eating it, that's considered a value chain. You can look at smaller parts of a value chain, and those are also a value chain because they provide value. So a value chain is just a way of describing, again, certain types of activities that provide value. So when you are in this quadrant, you're trying to redefine that value chain, either by using a new technology or by focusing on a customer segment that has historically not been focused on, has been neglected by the incumbents. So that's usually how these startups get a foothold, is they focus on that segment of the customers that the incumbent is just like, oh, that segment doesn't have money in it, or that segment's too specific. For example, Netflix, when they first started out, they focused heavily on movie buffs because they would send them movies that were very hard to get otherwise. You couldn't find them in the mainstream movie rental places like Blockbusters. You had to go to Netflix, and Netflix would ship you a CD. And companies like Blockbuster, they were just like, yeah, that there's no money in that market. So they were okay ignoring Netflix because they thought that it wasn't a threat until it became mainstream. And then all of a sudden, Blockbuster's out of money, right?
I think another aspect was Blockbuster not pivoting hard enough. Netflix kind of embraced the internet and the pivoted to streaming a lot quicker.
Yeah, so the problem, the advantage that these disruptor companies have is that they're using new technology.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Like you said,
they are using
the incumbent is using the mainstream industry. And so your advantage coming in, not only are you working in a niche, but you are also utilizing the newest technologies because you're just newer.
Exactly. So the goal of this company is trying to use the newest technology and trying to experiment as much as possible with that technology to see the applications. So you might not find the technology you want to use to begin with, but you eventually find it, and that gives you an edge over incumbents because incumbents are very it's hard for them to switch. It's hard for them to move and use a different technology or adopt new practices because of bureaucracy, but also because they're just set in their ways.
Yeah.
They make money, so why do they need to change?
Yeah,
right?
and not even set in their ways or even to the fault of their own. It's just we can't spend the kind of money to uproot what we have right now to use this new technology. Like, it's just not doable.
Yeah.
It's not only is it, well, we're making money with this, it's just like it's not financially feasible to switch over.
Which is startup, it's really easy to switch
Like
over.
NASA's still running on Windows Vista or something. Like it's just we don't need to. We're using this and we have to keep using this because of how expensive or how long it's going to take to switch.
To switch, exactly. Do you have any questions about this quadrant? Any clarifications? Any comments?
No, I think this will be the easiest one for viewers to grasp. It was the easiest for me to grasp just because it's very stereotypical of startups to be in this quadrant. So I think this is the easiest one to understand.
Yeah, so the next one we're going to talk about is the value chain strategy. This sits on the coordinates of collaboration and storm the hill. Do you want to elaborate a little bit about what you think companies in this quadrant do?
So it's collaboration, storm the hill. So you're not necessarily new to what you're doing, but you're collaborating with key partners to get it out there quicker than your competition. I think this is a hard one to visualize too, and no real life examples kind of come to my head. So if you want to go dive right into an example.
Yeah, if we're diving right into an example, the example that the article provides is Peapod. Peapod identified that a certain customer segment of an existing company, Julasco, wanted their groceries delivered because they didn't have time to go grocery shopping. So they went up to Julasco. They were like, hey, we would like to deliver groceries to this certain segment of your customers. Can you provide us the produce / give our drivers just the items and we will deliver it for you?
Okay. So it's like the theory behind, or not the theory, but the mindset behind, I'm going to expand the value chain. Not necessarily directly competing, but they are my competition and I'm trying to add another leg to the value chain to make it more valuable for end users.
Yes. So these type of companies are looking for ways to fit into the value chain, and usually they interact with customers. Not all the time, but usually they interact with customers.
Okay.
The focus for these companies is how to be profitable, commercialization, and the day-to-day operations, optimizing those day-to-day operations so that I'm the only one in this value chain that can do this. I'm the only one in this space that has the expertise, that has the talent, that has the mechanics to do this specific service, and that's why people want to partner up with me. That's why incumbents want to come to me and be like, here is the opportunity to get to our customers. We depend on you because you're reliable and you're competent to do this for us.
Okay, one question I have then is, I understand the key partners and the collaboration aspect of it, but then how does this pertain to the storming the hill? If you're relying on, I'm the only one that can do this in this value chain, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of competition out there for it then.
So the reason it's storm the hill is because you're trying to get a product out really fast. You're not focused on patenting. You're not really focused on protecting your idea. You're banking on the fact that your company is talented and has the expertise.
Okay, so the not the storm the hill is in there's a lot of people following me, or that I need to act fast because there's someone behind me, or I need to iterate quickly. It's just storm the hill in terms of I'm going to be reliant on customer feedback because that's kind of the way my company's operating.
Yeah, customer feedback / I just need to get so storm the hill just means I'm going to get a product out. I'm not worried about other people following me. I'm going to use one of my strengths, in this case, my expertise and my talents, in order to prevent other people from
Catching up.
Yes, catching up / becoming competitors.
Okay.
So, like, if you look at the Peapod space, there isn't too many companies that do this. Right now, you can count Instacart in that space, and I feel like Instacart's dominating. But I think Instacart came in with a disruption model.
They were one of the few that did it.
Yeah, they came in with a
initially.
disruption model. Peapod came in kind of plugging into the existing incumbents, basically using this value chain strategy. So in this type of startup, the founding team is really important because they bring in the expertise and talent that is needed to make the company look competent and make the company be able to optimize their day-to-day operations.
Yeah. So not only do they have the know-how of how to build what they're doing, but they also have the authenticity or the prestige or reputation because they were in the industry.
Yeah. So these are, the article calls them the quiet companies that are very, very successful. Because you don't usually hear about them, you don't usually think about them, but they keep their head down, they do the work, and they usually come out of the other side really rich.
You hear about them at the end.
Yeah.
Like Instacart. I think it's one of those.
I think Instacart in this case came in as a disruptor because they were trying to
But it's very similar.
overturn the Peapod domination of this market.
Yeah, and I think they kind of came at it from a completely different angle too. They weren't like, oh, we're going to partner up with these restaurants, which they did, but they were more focused on just, okay, we have a bunch of people getting food from all these different markets and delivering to these users. They were kind of in the same boat as Peapod, but like for a while, like I don't think they're fairly old now. I don't think they were necessarily widely known when they were even successful after the first couple of years.
Yeah. I think they fit into in between strategy of value chain and disruption.
Okay.
With maybe disruption coming in at the beginning when they were first starting off, and then switching more towards the value chain now that they're partnering up with. The reason I say Instacart is more of a disruptor is because if you look at the way Peapod does things and the way Instacart does things, it's very different. Instacart is more focused on new technology, like having the app to be able to choose what you want to kind of order. Peapod, I believe, is still more of a website model where you're kind of going in and trying to figure that out and scheduling weekly or monthly grocery runs.
Okay, yeah, so Instacart kind of came in and said, hey, we're in 2020, or well,
yes,
back then it wasn't 2020, but hey, we're in the modern era. Things can't be that regimented. People want this on the fly whenever they feel like it, quickly and accurately. And so they just came in with that business model.
And it also incorporated the gig workers in, which was a whole different business model than what Peapod has, which is actual salaried, or maybe not salaried, but employees. Contract. Employees are part of Peapod that did the deliveries. Instacart was like, we will outsource it.
Yeah,
which was a whole
like the whole Uber, Airbnb
business model.
Frame of mind business model,
yeah. Do you want to move on to the next quadrant? Do you have any questions about this quadrant?
I don't think I have any other questions about this quadrant now, unless there's anything you want to wrap up with it. I'm good.
Yeah, I think I'm good. Next quadrant is the architectural strategy quadrant. This one sits at competition and build a moat. So, thoughts?
Yeah, I guess this is another one that's not too hard to visualize because, it's those stereotypical big companies of, I have my patents, I have my trademarks, I have my trade secrets, all my private data, and I have competition. This was competition and build a moat, right?
Competition.
Yeah, so I have competition, and my edge is my patents, which is the Apples, the maybe Googles, maybe Facebook, like you're focusing on patents, you're focusing on your technology, on your research, you have a lot of R&D, and you know there's competition out there, and your edge isn't going quickly and getting to market faster and iterating. It's, I know how to do this better than you.
Yeah. So the companies in this quadrant would focus on creating a value chain. They're creating a whole new platform. They're creating a whole new supply chain. They're creating a whole new product, new service, something that has not been seen before. Something that the founders kind of envisioned or had a vision of and created it, came up with a plan, stuck to it, and then delivered to customers. So they're targeting probably customers that are new, completely new, and haven't experienced this type of value before. Obviously, you're still going through the traditional steps of what is the problem, what solution can I provide. It's just a very unique solution to a very unique problem that the customer might not think they have.
Okay.
So
I guess-
Google, for example, nobody thought that I could Google something, or I want to Google something, or I even want to use a search engine, right? But Google came in with a vision of, I want to be able to provide people with a way to find these websites really fast.
I don't think they were the first ones to provide search. They were the first ones to do it as efficient as they did. They made it accessible.
So there've always been database searches, and there've always been there was a market of search engines. It was just done very poorly, and it was done for very specific things. Google was kind of the first to come out with a really efficient algorithm, and also generalize it to the amount of websites that they generalize it to by using that efficient algorithm.
Yeah, again, focusing on the technology, on the patents, on the
Yes.
I know how to do this better, and so I'm going to focus on that.
So they
and build my
created a
business.
platform. Yeah, they created a platform where the customers, for example, before Google, I think a lot of customers who knew about search were very experienced internet users. Once Google came in, now you no longer need the AOL, because I think that's what customers usually use, because the AOL kind of came in with their network provider. They can now go to Google to search things up, where Google was a lot better.
Yep. Again, they focused on accessibility and efficiency to kind of loop it into the regular users.
Yeah, so the build a moat strategy in this case is usually trade secrets. Some of the processes are patented. I think like the Google search algorithm is probably patented.
Maybe.
But it's mainly a trade
yeah.
secret / it's really hard to fucking replicate. It's impossible.
I mean, I would almost think it'd be a trade secret instead, just because they don't even want to. Patenting means you have to explain it, right? Because in order to make it legally yours, you have to explain exactly how you did it. And I don't think that's something Google would want to do with their search, but maybe it was. I don't know. I'd have to look it up.
So these type of companies build platforms, not specifically products.
Okay.
Meaning they kind of they go beyond just solving a specific need to trying to solve a variety of needs with their services.
Yeah, so I guess some companies that come to my mind when we're talking about this are the Shopifys, the Google, Facebook, Apple, the big companies that kind of seem like they built out. Yeah, Netflix.
Netflix came up with a whole different platform. Yes, they started off as a disruptor, but I think they later on went to become an architectural strategy where they built up a whole streaming service and they came up with a model.
Yeah, and again, you don't necessarily have to stick to one quadrant the entire lifetime of the company. You can move around depending on what you're trying to do. And maybe you started one because that's where you needed to start, and it kind of morphed into a different type of company years down the line that fit into another quadrant. That is completely possible. It's not anything that's strict and you have to stick to.
Yeah. So again, it's easy to these are kind of fluid quadrants where you can move from one quadrant to another / you can be in two quadrants at the same time. It's just a template to kind of inform your later decisions.
Yeah, it's a definition. It's not a restriction. It's just trying to define where you're at so that you can better visualize it and build around it. It's not restricting you to it.
Yeah, as we talked about before with the business model canvas, it's more of a way to think about how you would like to structure your business / where would you like to position yourself as a business, what kind of customers you want to target, things like that. It's helping you think through what you need to kind of go through to become an official business, or what you need to research / assume / whatever you need to do in order to take this idea from just kind of like a hazy idea into your in your head to this is what I want it to be, and this is how I'm going to start that.
Yeah, it's more of a starting place. You need to start somewhere, and the business model canvas is giving you that starting place, giving you something concrete that you can get onto paper, get your thoughts down, and go from
Go from there, yeah. Excuse him.
Yeah.
So, like, Yeah, the business model canvas was for the lean startup. This is more of an alternative to that. It's again allowing you to uncover specific like potential strategies that you can use. So different quadrants will allow you to uncover different strategies. And the writers of this article, or the authors of this article, believe that if you can't fill out at least two of these quadrants with your business idea, then you don't really have a business idea. I don't really agree with them. I think that you can have a business idea that fits only into one of these specific quadrants. It's just, again, something to think about, something to be able to give you a roadmap on what to do next.
I think I would agree with it. I think you might be suited for one, and you might fit another vaguely, and maybe it's not as good of a fit as one quadrant is, but I think you should be able to put yourself and adapt a strategy in that quadrant just to make sure that you aren't just looking at this from a narrow view.
Okay.
Even if it is a poor decision and it wouldn't be smart for you to go from that angle, it's still an angle that exists and you should be aware of it, I think was more the point.
Yeah, I can see that argument. I just think that if you have a very strong idea that only fits into one quadrant, don't dismiss it, because that is still
obviously
a business model.
it's
That's
not
still
telling
a
you to
business
dismiss
plan.
it.
Yeah, I mean that's what they were basically saying is if you have an idea that doesn't fit into more than one quadrant, then it's a shitty idea. Which I don't disagree. I don't agree with at all. You can fill out different quadrants. It just some ideas are only specific to one quadrant, and it's just like you can step back and generalize it. But if it's such a strong idea, why even take the time to do that, right?
Okay. I guess
And I don't even know if you can, like, I'm saying you can step back and generalize it, but maybe there's no way of stepping back to generalize it. I think that even that is a fair idea that only fits into that one quadrant, and you can't really do anything about that.
I'd like to hear it. I'd like to hear the idea that can only strictly fit into one quadrant.
Yeah.
Just because I'm curious. Maybe if you have an idea and you think it can only ever be applied to one of these quadrants, let me know, because I don't believe that.
Yeah. Our thoughts on this? Do you have any specific thoughts?
I think it's a good starting point. I think, like the lean startup, it's a good methodology and it's good to have just kind of in your bank. The lean startup is geared one way, more focused on iteration from the beginning, and just kind of everything's an experiment. This is more of a starting point, a basis that's not really going to change, and you can experiment and iterate from there. I think there are good points in both, and you should never be too narrowed in on one, too attached to one methodology, but you could definitely learn from both.
Yeah, these are just ways to kind of get you to start your business. At the end of the day, you have to make those decisions. You have to pivot. You have to do whatever it takes to keep that business successful, to keep it afloat.
Yeah.
I don't think one specific methodology is going to get you there. There's just different ways of thinking about how do I want to start my business, and what might I want to plan for the future.
Yep. There's not anything that should inhibit you. If you're already started, it's not something you have to religiously follow. It's just good things to know.
Yeah. I say we fit more in the disruptor quadrant. I think most of our ideas have been in there.
In the disruptor quadrant?
Yeah, kind of.
I guess it depends on who you're asking, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as far as our business ideas, they've always kind of been, we want to come up with this new way of doing things and disrupting this industry.
Yeah, because we're coming at it from new angles or
new technologies. We haven't really explored the other ones with this YouTube channel. I feel like we're kind of just exploring the value chain quadrant. That's what I believe YouTube channels are.
But we're part of the value chain. We're not creating a new value chain.
Yeah, so that's why it's a value chain quadrant. It's essentially just plugging into that value chain by using the founding members' talents and expertise to bring in customers.
Okay. Yeah, I think this definitely fits there. But yeah, as far as our other startups, we usually do go for
the disruptor. Yeah.
Disruptor.
And I mean, I think different people just think of different ways to do things, so that you're comfortable with different ways of.
Yeah, I think those companies, we could have approached them very differently, and probably 2 or 3 of the other quadrants as well. So
I think it's something we're going to think about in the future. We definitely didn't know about this methodology, and I really like it. I would like to start a company and kind of think about it in this 4-dimensional way.
Yeah, I think we've always gone the lean startup, or at least, even if unknowingly, been focused on the experimentation iterations. Just we'll figure it out when we get there because we haven't had anything that we're necessarily planning on patenting or focused on R&D or any of that. We've always kind of just, we're transparent. What do you think? We're trying to figure it out as we go.
Yeah, but that's all we have for you today.
Yep.
Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
We don't have a sign off. Bye.
We don't have a sign off.
I think that should be a